Hello everyone, Humper here with Router Guides. We're going to take a look at the shuttle, the outside, some of the ports along the front and the back. Then I'm going to show you how easy it is to take off the cover, and we'll take a look at some of the insides like the memory slots, the CPU slots, and the heat pipe system. So this is showing you the shuttle as it's just shipped to you right out of the box. And what we have here is it's quite light. Now I do have some components in here because I've put it together, so it is weighing slightly more, but when it's not put together, no memory, no hard drives, and no CPU, it's insanely light. But even with everything in there, it's still light, not a problem to walk around with. So right here in the front we have our 5¼ bay, and I don't have anything here because who really cares about CD and DVD ROM drives. Behind there, you can actually take out a tray, change out the tray to put in 2.5-inch SD drives. We've got our power button right here. Then down here is this little flap that opens up, and you've got your USB 3 ports, USB 2 ports, your audio jacks, and I guess another USB port right there. I actually don't use any of these ports in the front, just because I tend to use only the ports in the back. Let's go around to the back, turn this around. Okay, I'm going to just lift this up a little bit and then turn down my lights. Hopefully it can focus in there. I think that's good enough. Okay, so along the back we've got our power supply is up here. This is the intake fan. This is the radiator exhaust for the heat pipe system. We'll get into that a little bit more. And then we've got two PCI slots. One of the PCI slots is going to be probably used for your video card, and the other one's a smaller one you could put in like a RAID card or a network card. Just be advised that since most of the bigger video cards will take up two slots, if you put it in a video card, you're going to basically block this slot right here. Also, another thing to keep in mind, I've talked about it in previous videos, this power supply is either a 250 or a 300 watt power supply. So if you do go for the video card here and it's like a GTX something, you're going to need to replace this power supply by buying the 500 watt one and just swapping it out. And I'll have a video about that a little bit later. You can see the cover is held together by 3 thumb screws, very easy to take out. Let's take a look at the ports down here. We've got 2 DisplayPort ports. We've got an HDMI port. This is the one I usually use at home. We've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I think 6 USB 3 ports, so a hell of a lot of USB 3 ports. An eSATA port. We have our network jack right there for Ethernet. We've got some more audio ports over here, and then it looks like a CMOS reset button. So quite a few USB 3 ports. Let's take off the cover. It's quite easy. All you have to do is unscrew these 3. And along the back there's some space right here. You just put your finger, pull back and pull up a little bit. And there's the inside of the shuttle. Let me just turn this around. Probably the best angle here. Alright, so we have 4 memory slots right here. It takes DDR4 memory. What I have in there are G.Skill 16 gigabyte sticks, 4 of them, so that gives me 64 gigs of RAM. We've got our M2 slots here and our M-SATA slot, so you're probably just going to use the M.2 slot. These are our 2 PCI slots right there. Now these cables are cables for the USB 3 ports in the front. Now if you're not going to use the USB 3 ports in the front, pretty simple, you could just disconnect this. Gives you a little bit more space to work with, but yeah, you could, looks like you can disconnect quite a few of these cables for those USB 3 ports. Or maybe just one. Yeah, it's just going to be one cable for that USB 3 port. Now you're probably wondering, where do I put the processor? Now the processor is under here. This is what's called the heat pipe system. Now normally on a computer, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be putting a heat sink along with the fan on top of the CPU right here. Now because this is a shuttle and we don't have a lot of space here, you'd probably be putting your drives up here. You wouldn't be able to put a normal sized heatsink fan, CPU heatsink type contraption like a like a Cooler Master or something like that, or a Thermaltake. So what Shuttle has done is, this is a solid block of metal. I'm guessing it's probably aluminum or steel or something like that. This contacts the top of your CPU. These heat pipes basically conduct the heat away, and then your fan actually sits back here. And this fan is held together by 4 screws in the back. Now, as I've said before in previous videos, this particular fan, it's a 92 millimeter fan, and it can get quite noisy when you're running at full speed. So what I always recommend people to do, and I'll show this in a later video, is you're going to open this up or take this out, and this is going to go forward, and you can just simply swap out that fan. Now the fan is powered by this deal right here. This is the fan header on the motherboard, and it's very easy to take out and swap out. You also have a secondary fan header right here, so you could actually put another fan if you wanted to. I don't know where you would actually put it, but because you really can't put it here, I guess you could jury rig something up somewhere along the case. So there you have it. This is the Shuttle PC. We talked about some of the ports on the outside, and I showed you a little bit of the inside. It's very simple to put together. One final tip for this: if you do decide to put this together, I suggest, if you haven't been used to a Shuttle before, the hardest part of this build is this part right here, which is the top of this heat pipe contraption. So notice the arrows are counterclockwise, which is kind of weird, but yeah, it's counterclockwise for all of them, and you actually have to push down pretty hard to get this to engage. It basically has a like a wedge, and it goes through the other side of the motherboard. And so on my first try, what happened was I guess it didn't make contact. This wasn't pushed, these 4 weren't pushed down far enough, and the bottom of this heatsink was not making contact correctly with the top of the CPU, the metal part of the CPU, and it had pretty high temperatures. But once I cinched all of this down, and I figured that it was cinched down by pushing down, use a flat screwdriver, you push down and twist, and then you're also looking sideways at this and making sure you don't see any of the white plastic, or you don't see that much of the white plastic. So there should be no space between this black screw and the motherboard and the white plastic there, and that lets you know that you have everything cinched down correctly, or as low as possible. But that's the toughest part about the Shuttle. I mean, it's once you figure that out, it's not a big deal. It is kind of a tight space in between here with the memory, but if that gives you trouble, what you can do while you're putting in the memory is just take out a couple of these cables to give you some space. But otherwise, it's not a big deal to leave these cables in, and you just kind of have to go sideways and pop the memory in. The M.2 slot, real simple. You just pop the stick in and cinch it down with the screw right there. So there you have it. This is the new Shuttle Skylake Edition. I popped in an i7 6700K, 64 gigs of RAM, and a 250 gig Samsung M.2 SSD. Humphrey Chung with Router Gods. I'll talk to you later.